Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night. That's pretty much covered all the time zones. I don't know where you are, so I'm not going to pretend that I do. My name is Richard Askam. You are more than welcome today to this edition of the Lighthouse podcast, coming to you live from Print Island. We've had to move indoors today because the weather's a little bit rough on Print Island. There's quite a lot of bad weather going around the world, so I'm in a slightly different part of the Lighthouse, but there's still room for my guests, and I've made room today for the wonderful award-winning Printing United Expo All-Star that is Lucy Swanston. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Richard. Thank you for having me.
Absolute pleasure, and welcome to the island. I'm sorry the weather is so bad today. You can't predict these things, but you did well to get here, and thank you for climbing halfway up the lighthouse today.
I know it's been an immense journey.
I can imagine. We'll talk about that in a second. But you are more than welcome, and thank you for joining us today. And for it, if there is anybody, and I doubt there is anybody in the world, Lucy, that doesn't know who you are and what you do, give us the 30-second flyby of who the hell you are.
Okay, Thank you for having me as well, by the way. I'm Lucy Swanston, Managing Director of Nutshell Creative Marketing. We're a full-service creative agency based in the UK, and it's our 20-year anniversary this year, so there's been a lot to celebrate. I also wear a couple of other hats. I chair the Strategic Mailing Partnership in the UK, which is a professional body that represents in excess of 850 members for specifically the mailing community, and we're supported by Royal Mail. And then I also, a few years ago, set up my own charity called Topic Heroes, and that supports children in literacy and inspires them to read and write. And it'll come as no surprise to you that the byproduct of them using Topic Heroes is a professionally printed, authored book that they can share with friends and family.
Brilliant. Well, in those three things, you've just covered all my favourite things in the world. Anyway, my daughter was an absolute bookworm when she was little, and still is to this day. She's about to turn 18, and I don't quite know how that happened, but yeah, she's an absolute bookworm. So that's a brilliant charity to be involved in. So well done, you.
Thank you.
Pleasure. So, and you're also, just listening to that introduction there, Lucy, one of those rare creatures in the world of print, because you actually sit in a multiple of camps there, and one of the goals, I think, and almost one of the missing pieces of the jigsaw with the wider print industry around the world is the engagement with the creative agencies and the creative world. How do you find it sitting in both of those sort of worlds? How do you find that as is it a natural sort of bedfellow, do you think, or is it just something that you have to work on all the time to keep those printers engaged in the world of creative?
I think it's slightly different for me because I originally started in the world of print. So 30 years ago, my very first job was within an agency, but it was a bit of a hybrid. So we had printing presses, no digital at the time, photographic studio. It was all when it was like film and plates. So I was almost born into that blend of the togetherness of the print and creative naturally. So I don't think there's many, and forgive me if you've pointed out or you've come across a few, but there's not very many agencies like ours that are intrinsically linked to designing for print. Regardless of whether it's graphics for an event, whether it's corporate annual reviews or signage, labels, packaging, etc. We've always prided ourselves on having that blend. So the connectivity between the two has come naturally, but there's still a lot of work to be done in getting that collaboration with the printer from the start of the project, regardless of what it is that you're designing for, because that's where the magic happens, and that's where the best ideas are born, I believe.
Yeah, no, I agree, and that's interesting. So the ink came first in your bloodstream, in your background and history, and then but you obviously saw quite clearly the opportunity to add the creative side and the marketing side to that inky background, which so many don't, and this is this for me is part of the overall wider problem that the industry suffers from. Is it's kind of its own inability to talk to people. One of the reasons why we set Print Island up was to give it a mouthpiece into the outside world. You actually sit in the outside world with Nutshell as well, but you understand the inside world of what is it? The shyness of printers.
Yeah, well, we're fortunate enough because we've got quite a diverse customer base. We're fortunate enough to see it from all different perspectives. So, you know, within Nutshell Trade Services, we work specifically with the print industry supply chain. So we understand like the challenges that, you know, the OEMs, the software providers, the ink manufacturers, the paper merchants, that what they face and how that fits into like the end part of the supply chain, as in the print service provider, and what then ultimately what brands want, because we're working with brands direct as well. But to your point about being, you know, on Print Island, and we're all very good, and we have these amazing communities that we all have a lot of fun in and learn from each other. But more work definitely needs to be done outside of that island, and being part of other communities that don't actually fully appreciate the impact that print has on not just in the marketing space, but how reliant we are on it in lives in general. You know, we just talked about books, for example, the pleasure of reading. You know, if we didn't have printed passports, we wouldn't be able to travel. So we describe it in a way where people pigeonhole it into the marketing sense or the advertising sense of the world, but actually it's enormous, as you know. So I'm really looking to have more of or for the print industry to have more of a voice outside of our communities, or Print Island, as you refer to it, having get involved with, you know, global advertising events that actually don't have representation of direct mail, for example, as a direct marketing channel. You've got all the digital advertisers in abundance there, but not anything representative of what we do and the impact that it can have when it's working with the likes of digital channels.
I think that's the challenge, isn't it, as well? Because you know, I say you are possibly even unique. I think in with Nutshell to be able to understand all parts of that discussion and all parts of that argument, if you like, in many ways. Because when you fragment that and people sit in their silos as they do, and I understand that business happens like that, you know, but there is always usually a bridge between what we do and what we and who we'd like to do it with. And one of the reasons that Print Island sort of exists as that wonderful place, and not a metaphor in any shape or form, for that echo chamber, you know, is the bridge, is the raft, if you like. How do we build the boat? How do we encourage the PSPs around the world? Because I understand that they're the last point of contact before the end user, if you like. It's in many ways it's not a problem for the OEM, although they would benefit from a greater degree of conversation externally, because then there'd be more jobs, and then there'd be more print, and then you'd need more printers. So it's a back and forth discussion, I think, that needs to happen more. You're an example of somebody that understands that, but how can we help other PSPs around the world to understand that last bit of conversation is the most important bit?
Yeah, I'd like to just rewind back a little stage. So if I put my SMP hat on and sort of give you a bit of an insight into the strategy that we're deploying, it'll hopefully put it into context. So it's about educate. I think by the time you get to the PSP, we need to have educated the whole supply chain. So I'll use an example. I was in one of our working party meetings for the SMP a few days ago, and we were talking about we've got a whole raft of free training resources. So some of them are from the DMA, like the IDM, and Royal Mail have supported those. And we were debating whether, because our membership is so diverse, and you look, you know, anything from, you know, the Canons, the Ricos, the Fujifilms, right through to the print service providers themselves, we were debating whether it would be beneficial for the likes of the OEMs to be involved in those training programs. And I viewed my viewpoint on that was absolutely, I think they should. And people are like, well, why? Because they're not, they're not selling the channel. They're not. I said, because part of that educational process, they're going to be challenged along the way. I'm selling a bit of hardware that will ultimately print X amount of sheets or knock out X amount of thousands of direct mail pieces. And the challenges that they're going to get by selling that piece of hardware at the moment is, oh, well, mail volumes or print volumes are dropping. And what, why would we invest in new equipment if we're going to do blah, blah, blah? So my take on that is that if we're providing credible intel around the training programs, if we're providing research reports that are going into the brands, which actually tell us exactly where brands are spending their marketing budgets at the moment. So I can tell you in the last quarter, direct marketing has actually increased, of which direct mail is a component of that, by 9%. So when the OEM gets the challenge of, oh, actually, mail volumes are dropping, why would we invest in new equipment? Well, if you look at what the brands want and what they actually are spending their budget on, that's actually not the case. So is there a way that, your marketing team, or there might be a owner manager or whatever, that's looking in the wrong place for this type of business? So it was a very long way of saying it all, but hopefully you get the point that educating every part of that supply chain that's relative to them will help them understand more about the different marketing channels. It was the same with the events. So graphics spend in the last 12 months, this is just the UK, by the way, from the Bellwether report, about 2,000 marketeers that are surveyed quarterly, but events was the same. So in terms of like graphic spend, it's the same conversation. Actually, there is a burning need for it. Events have grown significantly in the last 10 quarters. I think overall it's in the region of about 12-13%.
Wow. I mean, that's what it proves as well, Lucy, is people need to understand what a supply chain actually means, and that it doesn't just relate to the link either side of you. It relates to the link either side of them, and so on and so on and so on. And in many ways, I think you'd think they'd know this, right? But because the world has changed and continues to change, they need to understand the need to change with it. And if that's as simple as a broader communication, or even collaborating further down that supply chain to see, it's a bit like a housing chain, right? We talk an awful lot about housing chains, especially in the UK. And sometimes in order to get the housing chain moving, you need to, one of the blockers at the bottom needs to be moved, and then everybody else can move. I've heard cases where people at the top of that housing chain have bought the house at the bottom of the housing chain in order for everybody to be able to move up. So there's a commercial reality to any chain of events, and I think there's a missing piece here. You're right that it's education with a small e, because nobody likes school. Let's be honest. But I think understanding how that chain reaction works makes you part of every part of it, and I think that's the bit that we need to get across more.
Exactly. It was the same with, have you heard of Jitmail before?
Yeah.
So Jitmail, the mailing currency that we use to measure, in the same way as you would with TV and radio, etc. But we had the same conversation. Should everybody in the membership be Jitmail certified? And I said, absolutely, they should.
Yeah.
Because it's another. The more the supply chain is involved in and knowledgeable about the channel, the easier it is to impart on the information and the value that the channel can bring, regardless of where you are in the supply chain.
100%.
Because we all have an influence.
We do, and even the consumer, of course, is now influencing that decision, because the world has changed. I was talking to somebody last week in the Lighthouse about the law of economics has changed now from supply and demand to demand and supply. And we as consumers, given the nature of new technology, have changed the way that we need to respond to that demand. And the days of waiting for the phone to ring and hoping to get an order, gone. I mean, I don't even know anybody has a phone anymore. A landline, certainly. So we need to be able to respond to the way that the customer now wishes to be sold to, rather than just keeping the way that it's that's the way it's always been is the worst phrase ever, isn't it?
Precisely. Yeah.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit more about Nutshell. In a nutshell, that's the perfect name for a podcaster like me. In a nutshell, Lucy, tell me a little bit about Nutshell. What have you seen over the last, you said 20-year anniversary this year, so you've got a good bunch of anecdotal evidence there of what the last 20 years look like. And then I'd be really interested to hear from you, given the headwinds that we're all experiencing in every part of life at the moment, to be honest, how you see the next 20 years and the evolution of what you've so brilliantly created so far.
Well, the next 20 years, I'm hoping within that period, I will be retired by then. But who knows? What have I seen? Do you know? I was listening to one of your podcast. Was it one of your podcasts or a podcast?
I hope so.
It was one of Chris's podcasts. So it was
Okay.
It's intrinsic, yeah. And they were talking about, it was a web to print one with Pat McGrew and Cox
and Tim.
And I was just reflecting on stuff that we'd done within our agency, and I remember investing in a web to print platform probably 15 years ago, and people were like, what the hell are you doing? You're taking away valuable billable creative time from your studio. You're not even a printer. Go sort of figure. And it was something that we embraced at a very early age and really paid off. And the reason why it paid off is because the customers at the time were appreciative of the value that it gave, because it freed up budget for us to do other stuff that was more powerful and important to them, instead of, paying creative hours to update very simple artwork tasks. Obviously, the world's moved on significantly with the web to print space now in comparison to what we were using, but nonetheless, it was quite a shift. And then similarly, we made quite a significant investment again very early on with a marketing automation platform that incorporated print, which, as you'll know, is a bit of a rarity. I mean, they're now in abundance, and you can do all sorts of things. But again, that was a time, not because the market didn't need it; it was because the market didn't fully understand it, and I wasn't very good at explaining it either. And the biggest mistake I made was trying to explain the tech to somebody, and then it suddenly dawned on me about 2 years afterwards. I'm like, why am I telling them what the tech is and how it was? It's not as if when we're designing stuff, I go to them, we've got this really amazing Adobe InDesign and Photoshop platform, create all your things on, and this is how it works. And I had that light bulb moment. I thought, no, I just don't need to. In fact, I don't even need to talk about the software. It's just, we can do this, this, and this. We can automate campaigns that incorporate print and what have you. So those were a few sort of standout moments that differentiated us in that kind of print industry space. And of course, I mean, it goes without saying, AI has been a huge topic within the agency at the moment. We've set up a focus group, and we've got a kind of quite a strict protocol how we do and don't use it. We fully embrace it, but we also fully stand by it's never going to completely take human creativity out of it. When I was at Printing United, I was fortunate enough to listen to Steve Metcalf again, who does the Imagine AI event. And, there's even lessons now in AI in, how to write a good prompt. So again, it has to come from the human to enable you to, and I was like, oh God, right, okay. So that was quite interesting. And I think if I reflect on the last sort of 20 years, I mean, it has absolutely completely flown by.
Yeah, it does.
I mean, it goes to say, done it without the people. That's the flip side to AI. Without the people, we wouldn't be doing what we're doing today and working with the brands that we're fortunate enough to work with globally. So yeah,
And I think
huge shout out to my team.
that's the bit of AI that people forget, which is the actual intelligence as well, which is required to get these things. And I'm curious to know, because you seem very comfortable with being an early stage adopter of new technologies, new working processes. You mentioned the web to print software. There is that shared ethos across your team, or have you had to fight any battles over those times to make those changes?
Yeah, absolutely. I never sort of go motoring forward. Well, most of the time I don't go motoring forward without teams like input. I value their, their insight, their intel on all things that we do.
Because
They're way more
it's quite
experienced from.
unique. It's quite unique, Lucy. There's a few. I've used the unique word a few times on this conversation. That you've sort of dived in to utilize something before, let's call it, the main body of the industry has really recognized the value of it. And I use the word early stage adopter because of that. I can't remember the scientist, but the adoption curve. The first 10% of the people that just have a go and see what happens. And that's, they're the people that got the iPhone first. And everything that happened first, there's about 10% of the population typically have a go. And then behind that, at the end of that, there's the late stage adopters of 30% that have to, because, well, they've got no choice now. And I think the print industry largely sits somewhere in the middle, because they seem very keen to utilize new technology. This is why I say they're the tech industry. They just don't know it. But then they try and apply it to old practices. So I wrote a blog for somebody last week called teaching a new dog old tricks. Sorry, teaching an old dog. No, one of those. Some dogs, some tricks. And I think it's quite hard when you have a constant flow of new tech. AI isn't new, of course, but the usage of it is. Do you find it harder now than compared to 20 years ago? Do you see the rate of change just increasing, accelerating constantly?
Yeah, I find it overwhelming. I'm not going to lie. When we go to, just going back to the Printer United had an AI. If you'd have been there, Richard, you would have.
I know.
Would have been
Don't rub
part
it in.
of it.
Yeah, I was wearing an eye patch, so that's fine.
Yeah, the rate of change is incredibly overwhelming. I mean, they're literally every month when they were doing the presentation, there's a new AI tool out there, and you're like, oh my God, I don't even know where to start, and is it compliant, and how would the team embrace it? And you just get to that. Whereas previous, if you talk like 15 years ago, we didn't, there was the odd bit of tech that you might tap into and use, as I described, but now it's just like, wow. But we've then got the constant challenge of, you talk about replacing human creativity, but the constant challenge of, well, what do you need a design agency for if AI can, overtake the world? And you look at the likes of Canva as an example, but we've embraced too. We'd never advocate creating something on there, but we now offer a service, and we've got clients come to us that have got corporate accounts, so we'll set up all the branding and the templates for these Canva campaigns or assets that they want, so it's still set up in the correct on brand and a well-designed way, and it isn't just churned out. Because let's face it, if you've got an eye for design, you can absolutely see when something's been AI generated.
Yeah, you can. Yeah. It's the same with speeches, and I do a lot of coaching in public speakers, and you can almost hear ChatGPT coming back at you, which is hilarious. But I think and you make a really good point that AI for me is just another tool in the toolkit, and it's great, but it's no greater than the internet was when that came around. It's no greater than electricity was when that came around. It's just an adaptation to the things that we're used to. And as is always the case, and business is very good at sorting itself out in these regards, it will be those most willing to adapt that will survive. And typically, I think that that this is where I've got great faith and great story in the print industry, A, because of its longevity, it's been around quite some time now, and B, all right, there'll be some that win and some that lose. That's the nature of commerce. But I think in that middle bit of that adoption curve, you've got a very appreciative audience, a receptive audience for new technology. So it's not like everybody's going, no, we want to go back to printing presses and Guggenheim and in the good old days. There's definitely a willingness to adapt, isn't there?
100%. Yeah.
It's really enjoyable to work with a bunch of people that have that mindset as well. I mean, you must find this on both sides of Nutshell, that you're having sort of similar, if not the same, conversations, but from different perspectives.
Yeah, there's a lot. I'll tell you what I'd like to see more of is there's a lot of brilliant trade associations, professional bodies globally. I'm not on about just in the UK, but I'm a great fan of collaboration and the power that can bring, and the collective when these associations or membership groups come together. And the reason why I say that is it's not just about the community, but it's about then not doubling up and the repetition of work. So we've just in the UK now, we've just formed an initiative called Print Green, which we've now assembled all the sustainability working parties. So we've got one unified voice from, like the BPIF, the SMP, the IPIA, to name a few. And we've now got one voice or one initiative where we're promoting the power of print direct to the brands. So instead, and then, all those voices unified as one is better than everybody trying to do their own little thing in silos. And I think, AI should be a similar, should have a similar collaboration across the industry. There's lots of people doing lots of great things, but, if you are, new to the world of AI and you're a small print shop, whatever, that has to be seriously overwhelming because you just wouldn't know where to start. So to have that kind of unified space to go and collect and get the information that you need or the peer support that you want would be invaluable.
Yeah, no, I agree. And in fact, willingness isn't the same as ability. And I think it's quite interesting that you say about the unified approach. I've often described, and this is my local town where I live, not far away from Print Island, has this problem that you have a number of willing parties to do things, but they're all doing them at the same time, and therefore nothing is getting done. And it's the way I equate it is like your car is stuck in the mud, right? You're coming out of a music festival, your car is stuck in the mud, and 30 people decide to give you a hand to get your car out, and they all gather around the car, and individually they all push, and all they do is push the car further into the mud. What they need is somebody to say, why don't we all line up behind the car and all push in the same direction, and then the car gets out of the mud. And I think that unification point that you're making there, the industry needs a little bit about that. I'm curious to know, Lucy, whether this is because I always quite find these sessions quite therapeutic, because you get through to somebody's real psychological self. Have you always been an organizer? You strike me as somebody that can see something that needs organizing and you go ahead and organize it. Is that fair to say?
That is probably fair to say. Yeah. And I guess from prior to, I kind of fell into the industry. So prior to me working at the first print stroke agency that I mentioned at the start of the podcast, I used to be a dancer. So I think that's instilled. I went to stage school for, well, up until I thought it was a good idea to buy a motorbike when I was 16 and got knocked off. So that sort of
okay.
my career. And I ended up working in this particular print stroke agency. And I think that gave me the drive and the discipline to just get up and show up. And if you have an idea, then you jolly well get on with it and make sure
Absolutely.
it's good. And, of course, all part of that is the organisation of things, which is why we probably do a lot of events, because it's all about the process and the organisation of it all.
I'm guessing you were dance captain?
Down as captain?
No, dance captain. And you were back in the days. Were you
Oh,
dance captain in?
no, we didn't have dance captains then.
Did you
You're
not?
talking
Okay,
quite a
okay.
long time. No, no,
The only reason I
that's
ask is, and the
that's more
point of
theatre,
theatre.
I think.
Yeah, well, absolutely. And this was the point I was going to make, was the
Yeah,
discipline that you talk about and the teamwork that's required and the timing that's essential and the communication that is necessary. All of those things put together would make any organization work better.
yeah,
So here we are. We've got a
agreed.
couple of minutes left, Lucy, and I'm curious to know, looking forward. We're towards the end of the year now when we're recording this, and so it's that time of year, isn't it, where you think, I wonder what next year is going to be like. What's your thoughts?
Yeah.
Give me a one answer about what you expect to see. Hopefully, fingers crossed, the headwinds turn into at least side winds would be good next year. But what's coming our way in 2026? Do you think?
I'm not sure what's coming our way because, God, we've had a few curveballs, haven't we, over the last few years. I think my I think the sentiment behind what I would like to see happen is, we have got such a huge opportunity in the print industry at the moment in terms of embracing a lot of the marketing channels that are out there. And as I've cited before, there's research that backs this up and proves it. And that's not just in the UK, by the way, that's globally as well. So I think I'd like to see the industry embracing that more and be more curious as opposed to being cautious.
Mm-hmm.
So let's be a little bit braver. Let's sort of step outside of our comfort zone. Let's have conversations outside of the island and be part of communities that embrace channels that we know and absolutely fundamentally work and we've lived and breathed, but talk to the people with the purse strings that can actually have that influence and work their way back through the supply chain, as
There
we
you go.
discussed earlier.
Yeah, no, love it. Thank you. Lucy, thank you so much for joining me in the Lighthouse today on Print Island. It's been a pleasure to talk to you, and some really interesting insights from all sides of the industry, which I think is an important conversation to be had. So thank you for your time, and thank you for listening to us at the Lighthouse on Print Island. My name is Richard Askam. We will see you somewhere soon.